Right, today we're going to be looking at this mini HD camcorder. Or is that a camcorder? The model number of this one, as far as I can tell, is the DV828T. And the specs on it are as follows. It records at 1080p at 30 frames a second in H.264 or 720p at 60 frames a second. So that's quite impressive, if it's true. So let's get inside the box and have a look at it. I'm determined to take less time over this video review than I normally do, so excuse me if I hurry along a little bit. Inside the box you get the following: a piece of Velcro, a car 12V USB charger, a USB A to mini B lead, that's for data transfer, and a USB A to mini B lead that's for charging only. It uses separate leads for both. The instructions come on a poorly photocopied piece of paper. And that's everything you get, other than, of course, the camera itself. Now let's just have a look at that in a bit more detail, but first we'll try and figure out its family tree. And the reason for that is that this camera is a little bit of a weird relation to the other ones. First off, we had the 808 number 11 camera, that was a 720p camera, and then along came the jumbo 808 camera, and that was pretty much the original 808 but with a larger battery life in a bigger case. Recently they brought out the 808 number 16 camera that had a lot of improvements over those previous two models, so you'd assume that the latest jumbo would just be the number 16 camera but with a bigger battery life. But you'd be wrong in that assumption. The latest jumbo is just like the previous jumbo but with the addition of 1080p and 720p 60. All the improvements of the number 16 camera have been forgotten about. You'll need to supply your own memory, and that's micro SD or SDHC. I'm going to be using this Class 10 Samsung card in mine, and that goes into this spring-loaded slot here. The other things on this side of the camera, in the middle there is a reset hole, there's a USB socket. On the front, of course, is the lens. You'll notice there's no microphone hole on this one. On the back, they've put a Bluetooth sticker over the Toyota badge on this fake key fob. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they got told off. Now, the difference between this fob and the previous one is that the middle button actually does something on this one, so all three buttons are in use. Let's get the thing switched on. You tap the bottom button, an orange light flashes a couple of times, and then a blue light comes on to show that it's in standby at 1080p mode. Tap the middle button, that's 720p 60 mode, and then if you tap the middle button again, the blue and orange lights come on together, and that means it's in photo mode. So we'll tap it again, back to 1080p mode, and start recording. Tap the top button to start recording. The blue light flashes all the time it's recording to show that it's recording. Tap it again, it goes permanently blue to show it's in standby, and then hold down the bottom button until the light goes off to turn the camera off. And you can, of course, charge and record at the same time as long as you're using the correct USB lead. This camera doesn't loop its recording, and it doesn't let you get into any setup menus and change anything. I've pretty much shown you every feature it's got. So let's get out and have a look at some test footage, and for that we're going to compare three cameras: the original jumbo, the new 1080p jumbo, and the 808 number 16 cam. Right, we'll start off with the oldest camera and work our way through to the newest one. So this is the original jumbo. You'll notice the image is a little bit misty, but other than that it's okay. Moving on to the number 16 camera, that's quite a bit sharper. The colours are a little bit muted, but they're more accurate to what I was seeing on the day. And then this is the new jumbo 1080p, and it's very disappointing. It's zoomed in towards the middle of the image, the colours are too bright, and the dark areas are too dark. If you notice that doorway on the right, we'll move back to the 16, that's the detail on that, and then on the jumbo 1080p it's all darkness, which is no good at all. We move out to the 720p mode, which shows a wider field of view, but we've still got this strange colour and darkness issue, and it's not very good at all. We'll just move inside. This is the original jumbo again. You notice, again, a little bit misty. Maybe I've got something on the lens, I'm not too sure. This is the 808-16, which is quite a bit sharper than the original jumbo. It's very good indeed. In fact, it's probably about as good as you're going to get for a little camera of this sort at 720p. But then this is the jumbo at 1080p, and another issue that it's got, notice the movement of the people. It's rather jerky, and that's because it drops quite a few frames in 1080p mode. It's not smooth at all. But in 720p mode, strangely enough, even though it's 60 frames a second, it doesn't drop any frames, although I've had to convert that down to 30 frames a second to show it on YouTube. We'll just look at this area again on the right where the taxi's coming in. This is the Jumbo, the new one, at 720p, and then this is the 808/16. Notice it's quite a bit brighter on that. Everything's much clearer, it's a lot better. Zooming in on a section, just notice those chaps and that sign there. This is the 808/16. This is what the Jumbo sees. Again, kind of too bright and murky really. Back to the 808/16, which is so much better, and then back to the Jumbo again. But things change at 1080p. This is the 808/16 at 720p. Notice that 5 miles per hour sign. This is the Jumbo at 1080p. Look pretty much the same. But when you zoom in, this is what the 808/16 sees, and this is what the Jumbo sees. So the Jumbo is quite a bit more detailed. It just lets itself down with all its other faults. So if you think that's bad, let's have a look at the low light capabilities. We'll start off with the number 16 cam. This is just after 5 o'clock. Now, one thing I'll mention about the Jumbo cam, the new one, it's everything's off axis, and I'll explain that to you later on, but just ignore that for the moment, the fact it's all diagonal, and just look at this. It's all gone yellow. That's not very good. Let's try the same thing again. This is inside the station. The light in here is kind of medium to low, it's not really low. And then this is what the new Jumbo sees. Again, everything's gone orangey yellow. And then here we are just filming down from the station platform outside, looking at the road. And then that's what the new Jumbo sees. An orange mess. Very poor. Things are a little bit more evened out when it comes to pictures. If we just look at this picture here, notice how much you can see with a photo taken with the new Jumbo. We'll move across to the 808/16. That's taken from the same spot, and it's zoomed in quite a bit towards the middle. However, we've still got quite a few issues. The Jumbo is, of course, off axis. The greys are crushed down to black. The colours are weird, although it does have a little bit more detail than the number 16 cam, although you can't really see that here on YouTube. If this camera had been any good, I'd be a little bit reticent to open it up, but as it is, I think we might as well crack open the case and have a look inside. So here it is. Here's the all-new circuit board. You can compare this to my other video review of the older Jumbo model. You can see that everything's completely different on there. Notice here how they've mounted the lens assembly at the front, the kind of diagonal angle. I hope you can see that. That explains why all my videos are off axis. And here's me thinking I was holding the camera at a strange angle. It's not me, it's the lens. All I had to do was pick off the glue from that and then re-glue it straight this time. The battery comes with a connector so it can be detached, and some people are into that kind of thing. Here is the battery. If you want to know the battery life, it's about 1 hour and 5 minutes on a full charge. There are some people out there that want to know what chips are inside these things, so here, this is for you. There's a Samsung chip, and here's another chip made by Zoran, which is one of Superman's villains, I think. And notice here it says htinter.com. That's the website of the manufacturer. You can go there and have a look at it if you want. At the top right of the image here is the microphone, and notice where it goes when I put the case on. This is the bottom of the case, so the microphone is hidden behind the bottom left front of the case. And the sound on this is pretty poor. It's rather muffled and indistinct. Not very good at all. If you've seen some of my other video reviews, you'll find that this one's a little bit less detailed and goes into less depth, and that's because this camera's pretty rubbish and I don't expect anyone to buy it. I'll just skip through some of the information I might have missed out. The battery life is 1 hour and 7 minutes, I mentioned that before. You get a new file created every 2 GB. 2 GB is equal to 16 minutes of 1080p video. Now, one charge will record 3.3 GB, so you'd only really need a 4 GB card in this if you wanted it, but don't buy this camera, it's rubbish. Go and get the 808/16, it's a lot better. Oh, and the video doesn't loop in this. And as I mentioned before, you can't change any of these settings. There's no way to get into those menus. There's problems with this camera galore. The LEDs, I never mentioned this, you can hardly see the LEDs. They don't line up with the hole properly, and it's very difficult to make out what's going on. There's no way to change the time and date, I mentioned that before. It drops frames at 1080p, it needs a special USB lead for charging, it's got a narrow field of view at 1080p, the lens in mine was off axis, and as I said before, no way to change any settings in it. You're lumped with it. It is what it is, and that's what it is, and it's rubbish. I was never convinced that there was much point in doing a 1080p camera in one of these micro cameras, and this one certainly hasn't convinced me otherwise. Compared to the previous two models, it's actually a big step back, and especially compared to the number 16 camera. Now, when I tested the number 16 camera, there was a couple of little issues with it, but that's because it was a pre-production model. Since then, firmware updates have improved everything about it. I had some issues with low light capabilities, and that's been improved, and also, strangely enough, the field of views got wider. So at the moment, this is the camera to get if you want a small micro HD camera, and I'd suggest giving the 1080p Jumbo a wide berth. So all that remains for me now is to say thanks for watching.